Well, it's good to see you again. Today we're going to look at phytochemicals, which are basically non-nutrients because they're not part of one of the nutrient classifications, but are very important for reducing risk of disease. Um, Before we get into a real serious topic, though, I wanted to show you some pictures that I think will perk you up a little bit. Well, maybe not the first one, especially if this is a Monday, um, because some of you may look like the Monday Lisa here for that. Uh, yeah, some of you that have little kids, you could probably look at this and say, I can see that is going to happen. So, anyway, that would be not good. Uh, this is a set of signs at an eye doctor's office. That had to make sense. Uh, but you can see they important that they get there. Um, Telling your twins apart, one and two. That's great. Um, I always wanted twins, but anyway, I bet they'd be interesting. Um, Son and dad, you can see the difference. That's pretty interesting. Um, I'm sorry to bother you, but the bird feeder is empty. Um, I made a huge mistake. Maybe some of you may be thinking that about taking this class. You got yourself caught up in a bind there. Anyway, and then if you only focus on the problem, you might miss the easy solution. uh, that's Phytochemicals are just as you might imagine the name implies, are plant-based chemicals. Phyto means plant and chemicals means chemicals. Um, and phytochemicals are not part of nutrient classification. So we have the 6 classes of nutrients, but phytochemicals are not part of those. Um, and so they're not considered necessary for life, but they do protect against harmful substances. So they do help to resist diseases. We've known for a long time, and even when I was going to school way back in the dark ages, that populations on plant-based diets had low incidences of the diseases that would be of concern in this country. So heart disease, cancer. They didn't necessarily know why, but they knew that there was a correlation there. So where we're heading is getting a little bit more specific in that they know in some cases why the plant-based is important. I might add though before we get into that is that in the phytochemical realm we're probably in the still in the biochemical function era where we know a lot of the different individual phytochemicals, but we're not at a point yet where we can make recommendations about how much you need. We can just say that we need them. We find them in plants. So if you eat a plant-based diet that's varied and has a lot of variety, you're probably getting enough. But if you don't, you're not. But there's no recommendation that you need this much of one specific phytochemical. Now, someday they may, but at this point we don't. But this is from Jane Brody. He's been a health columnist in the New York Times for many, many years. Uh, but it's talking about plant-based chemicals that can help prevent disease. So these aren't ones that um, you need to live. Like you could be an individual who's comatose in a hospital and they have tube feedings and they can live for a long time, years on tube feedings. Um, but the phytochemicals are necessary to reduce the risk of diseases. Uh, Now we talked a little bit earlier that we are going to brainwash you into two things, eating a plant-based diet and eating as much to color as you possibly can. So as colorful of uh, fruits and vegetables as you possibly can. And then I guess the other part is as close to the earth as you can possibly eat, um, kind of a thing. So, even in the nutrition guidelines for 2015 to 2020, um, it included a variety of colorful foods. Some individuals put foods into color categories. I mean, you could even buy a book that puts foods into a color category. Um, and so because in similar colors, it seems to have, tend to have similar nutrients, but not necessarily. But I just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to, you could eat the color and buy a book that will tell you how to eat the color. But anyway, here's another just survey information where it basically says that eating a lot of variety of plants protect against disease. So I'm just, again, we need to get down to that plant-based diet. What I'm going to go through now are 5 categories of phytochemicals. And I got these categories from the Linus Pauling Institute research facility that's at Oregon State University. And so you can find other categories if you go to other places, buy books on phytochemicals or look at diet plans dealing with phytochemicals. You may find several different categories, but I'm going to go by I just had to choose one, so I decided to choose the Linus Pauling one. Um, as we go through, I do want you to know the headings of the phytochemicals, the 5 types. I don't necessarily want you to know within each group what the types are. I'm going to talk about them, but I don't care for testing purposes. I don't need you to know those. I do want you to know their activity, and I do want you to be able to recognize food sources or foods that would be high in these phytochemicals. Um, so the first one, the flavonoids, you can see the different types, isoflavones, limonene that you find in citrus. Phytoestrogens I'm going to spend a little bit of time on. But the 2 activities I want you to know about flavonoids are that they do detoxify carcinogens, which basically means that they will render them neutral so that they cannot effectively be an initiator of cancer or a promoter of cancer. And then they're also estrogen antagonists, and I'll explain what that means here in a bit. The food sources that tend to be high in flavonoids: soybeans, citrus, cocoa, and tea. So that doesn't mean other plants don't have them. That just means that these tend to have a high amount of them for that. Now, if we look at soybeans have a lot of what are referred to as phytoestrogens, and phytoestrogens are estrogen-like compounds that basically, if you eat them, can reduce the effect of estrogen in a positive way. As I understand it, most women produce maybe 3 times more estrogen than they actually need. I'm not sure why, but that's my understanding. And one of the things about estrogen is estrogen promote cell division. So excess estrogens don't cause cancer, but if you do have like breast cancer, endometrial cancer, uh, it will promote that cancer to divide faster. So it could increase the speed of the growth of the tumor. So the idea of phytoestrogens is that they will reduce the effect of excess estrogen so that it can reduce the possibility that cancers will divide faster. And one of the, so if we just look at estrogen receptors, I don't know how much cell biology you've had, but the communication piece for cells is a receptor. If it's a protein-based receptor, it would be in the plasma membrane because the proteins can't get across the membrane. But if it's a lipid steroid-based compound, they can cross the membrane, and which estrogen is, comes from cholesterol and that. Then the receptor is inside of the cytoplasm of the cell next to the nucleus. So you can see there on the screen that the estrogen molecule will go through the membrane and fit into the estrogen receptor, and um, then that sends a signal to the nucleus, and in some cases it will send a signal to go through cell division and make it more active. So the idea is if you have more estrogen molecules, then you could stimulate the cells more and they would grow faster. Well, here you can see the isoflavones. On the left, you see where estrogen's fitting into the receptor, but then you can see the isoflavones are basically the phytoestrogens will fit into the receptor instead. And if you read the caption at the bottom, it basically says isoflavones can block negative effects of excess estrogen. Um, and so because they will reduce the strong effect of estrogen and make a weaker effect, because you see the two lines there at the bottom, they can also stand in for estradiol molecule to moderate negative effects of low estrogen in the body. So I might add, there is some scientists and some health professionals that recommend that young kids, 4, 5, 6, 7, don't eat a lot of soy. And the reason for that is because of the phytoestrogens, because you're giving them a slightly moderate effect of estrogen. And there have been cases, and then again, this would be a case where parents get overzealous and that's all they feed their kids for protein source is soybeans. Um, and what happens is they get that low effect of estrogen when they're really young. And there have been cases where they say that young boys that eat a lot of soybeans actually get breast development because of the estrogen that they're eating. So I don't think, if you're moderate about it and just eat soy in moderation, it's not going to be a big deal. But these would be individuals that's all they get is soybean for protein, so that's not good. And then little girls, I would assume it could cause them to mature earlier because of the introduction of estrogen and that kind of thing. So anyway, the idea is that flavonoids do have a positive effect on reducing the risk of cancer. Um, Phenols or phenols, and you could see those. And I put the color of, just for giggles, I guess, beside the word what color category the food would be in. So anthocyanins would be in the red-blue food group, catechins green, that kind of thing. But what I want you to know about them is that they are antioxidants. And so oxidation leading to chronic inflammation and or plaque formation is critical. So we're trying to reduce that. So these are antioxidants. They also induce detoxification enzyme, which basically means that they don't detoxify, and this is dealing with cancer or whatever, but they induce the production of detoxification enzymes. So they increase like your immune system and that kind of thing. That could be critical for that. And you could see the food categories, things that are blue and bright red and red peppers and things like that. So red cabbage. So for just in the case of just the phytochemical phenols, red cabbage would be better than green cabbage. That doesn't mean that green cabbage is bad. Green cabbage is very good for you. But if we're looking at color, then the purple cabbage or red cabbage would be a better choice for that. But that's not to discard green cabbage. And then you can see the red peppers are going to have a lot of it and that kind of thing. Blueberries are kind of the king or queen of phytochemicals. They've been researched so much, but they have dark blue color, so they're very good for you. Kind of, and you can see with the polyphenols, and wherever you see this here, it's like it's blocking it. So if you follow football, the blocking schemes would have a scenario like that. So you can see ROS is reactive oxygen species, which is like a free radical, which can cause oxidation and lead to oxidative stress. Um, so anyway, the polyphenols would prevent oxidation and some of the interleukins and stuff that can lead to chronic inflammation and that kind of thing. Uh, Now the carotenoids, I'm sure you've heard of beta carotene, found in carrots, but you can see lycopenes found in tomatoes, and then we've got spinach with lutein in those. Um, and they're antioxidants also. I might add though, you noticed in phenols we had antioxidants and carotenoids are antioxidant. Well, these are different antioxidants. And so they would prevent oxidation by different things. That's why we need a variety of phytochemicals. So just because it says antioxidant doesn't mean it is an antioxidant for every oxidant, right? So there's many different kinds of things that can be free radicals or reactive oxygen species, and so the antioxidants would be maybe specific to one of those. So the antioxidants in phenols are different than the antioxidants um, in carotenoids. So you need both of them, kind of a thing. And then carotenoids are important for reducing the risk of ultraviolet light damage, especially like to your eyes and stuff like that. Uh, Food sources, you can see yellow, orange, red. So kind of phenols, they were red, and carotenoids are red, but and so they're just specific kinds of foods that they're red color. But the idea is that the phytochemicals are in the pigmentation of the food. Uh, that's why it's the color, it's the pigment of the food that gives you, and that's why red wine would be better for phytochemicals than white wine, because in red wine they get the color from the skin of the grape, and that's going to be higher in phytochemicals, kind of a thing. And so you can see the antioxidant. You can see on the left there where it says lutein and lycopene and beta carotene, and those you can see where they're actually embedded in the plasma membrane. So they do a lot with fat soluble kind of substances, because remember the plasma membrane is phospholipid and it's going to be lipid based. So these fit in there. Um, and so there are lipid-based antioxidants, and vitamin C is a water-based uh, antioxidant, which helps in your blood serum to do antioxidants. But fat-soluble ones would work with your plasma membranes and help prevent that from happening. Um, and another picture of the carotenoids, how they're part of the plasma membrane antioxidant piece. Now, you may have heard that ultraviolet light, can damage your retinas and that kind of thing. And as you get older, you might get the macro degeneration. But what they found is, you can see in the red caption there, that the visible blue light has been shown to damage the photoreceptors in your retina. And then on the left there, on the red, you see lutein is going to absorb blue light. So if blue light is going to damage and you get lutein to absorb that blue light, it would reduce the damage. So you'll see in some of those supplements that they give for eye health, like Bausch and Lomb or whatever, there'll be lutein in there. And then in some multivitamin minerals, they'll have it in there in kind of a a tool to say, we can help prevent uh, eye damage and things like that. So, and anyway, then you can see the lycopene, which you find in tomatoes. You can see that it inhibits a lot of things and has a lot of positive effects. So tomatoes are pretty good for this. Organosulfurs, again, obviously by the term, you would assume that they are going to have some sulfur as part of their structure. And you can see that allium is going to be basically the garlic and isothiocyanates and that. But they're going to detoxify carcinogens. Again, different kinds of carcinogens. I mean, we had this with the flavonoids, detoxification of carcinogens, but these again would work on different carcinogens, not exactly the same ones as the flavonoids. Um, but you've always probably heard a lot that garlic is good for you, and you know how important it is. Cruciferous vegetables, and you can see over on the right the picture, are members of the cabbage family. So we have cruciferous vegetables. So we have broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and leeks and those kinds of things. Well, I don't think leeks are part of the cabbage family, but cruciferous vegetables are named that because their blossom is shaped like a crucifix. So somebody gave them that. Um, but the organosulfurs is also a reason why a lot of little kids don't like broccoli, because to them they can they have such an acute taste buds at that young age, that they can taste the kind of the sulfur of broccoli, and it's really bitter and it just really does not taste good to them. So that's why kids, you have to remember that kids' taste is a lot different than as an adult, because our taste buds are a little bit less acute than theirs are. So sometimes they just don't like foods because it really honestly doesn't taste good to them, kind of a thing. Uh, anyway, we'll talk about cancer a little bit later section, but some of the progression of cancer is initiators are what's going to actually mutate the DNA. That's an initiator that's going to mutate the DNA to become carcinogenic. Promoters are basically anything that would increase the chance that an initiator gets to the nucleus and mutates the DNA, or as we mentioned with the estrogens, anything that would increase the speed of cell division for that. And then after you start promoting it and it starts dividing, and then your promoters, progression is just goes from a neoplasm to a tumor kind of thing. And then if it metastasizes and individual cells break off and you find secondary tumors around somebody's body or something. But you can see where garlic is going to have an effect on all of those stages. So it doesn't matter, even if you get the cancer, garlic might still help in the progression and reducing the progression of the cancer. And this, as you can see, is allicin is in garlic, and you can see the live cancer cell where the allicinase, where the allicin molecules are going to fit into the allinase, and it's the receptor, and then would encourage cancer to grow. But if you see the allicin is going to fit into the receptor so that the allen molecules have no place to go. And so basically that can help to kill the cancer or reduce its effect anyway. And then phytosterols. Phytosterols basically come from vegetable oils and nuts and seeds and all that, and they can help decrease cancer promoters. Again, a promoter encourages growth of the cancer. It's not an initiator, it doesn't cause the cancer, but it can decrease the promoters that would encourage initiation or speed of cell division. Just another note, it helps decrease cholesterol also in some cases. But um, anyway, this is the phytosterols and cholesterol. You can see it kind of grabs on it. So it's very similar to, we talked about the same situation with oligosaccharides, same situation with soluble fibers where they kind of grab on the cholesterol. Well, here we see that some of the phytosterols can do the same thing. They can grab onto cholesterol for that purpose. And then you can see the phytosterol anti-cancer effects. Again, wherever you see the negative sign, you can see that it's going to decrease those and help increase apoptosis, which is basically cell suicide, which would negate carcinogenesis with that. So anyway, some of the phytochemicals are bioactive, um, but others have to co-occur with same fruit. So what that means is when you get your phytochemicals, I don't care, if you get lutein in a supplement form, what this basically is saying is that it's not going to be as effective as if you got it from real food. Because as you see in the first red, they may not have bioactive potential themselves. I don't know how much the supplements have been researched at, as far as synergism is concerned. Um, but again, synergy means that two things working together are better than each of them individually working by themselves. So there's a reason, for example, that lutein is in a food because it's there with things that it should be with. And so when you eat the real food with lutein, um, then you're getting not only lutein, but everything else that works with that lutein that it's associated with. If you eat the real tomato, you get the lycopene with everything else that helps lycopene do metabolism. Uh, so that's what it's saying. That is how plants work through synergies. They work together and phytochemical teamwork. So it's better to eat the real food to get that synergy than to get it just as an individual thing, right? It's better to get vitamin C in a food than it is to take it as a supplement by itself. It's just more effective that way. So the idea is to promote eating of real food. And there's even some books on phytochemicals that deal with nutrient expression, gene expression that is affected by phytochemicals. So it's even going to be important on the genetic level. But as I mentioned, um, right now, health professionals do not know recommendations for phytochemicals. They don't really know how much we need. I mean, how much lutein do you need? Nobody knows. How much lycopene? Nobody knows. How much soybean would it take to cause an issue with phytoestrogen? Nobody really knows. There's research going on about them. So we're, as I mentioned, we're kind of at the beginning, kind of in that biochemical function era of phytochemicals, where they're still trying to figure out how they work, how cooking affects them, um, how much do we need, is there a level. They will get to the point at some time, I don't know when, but sometime in your lifetime, I'm sure they will be making recommendations for amounts of phytochemicals you need, just like they do vitamin C. But so the point is, at this point in nutrition, get your 9 fruits and vegetable servings per day with as much color as you can, as much variety as you possibly can in your food intake. Um, and then eventually, they may get recommendations down the road, But still, I believe the rule of thumb is going to be get them from real food, not from supplements. All right.